Welcome to another mini video from 2dgameartguru.com. Today I'm working in Inkscape version 1.3, showing you the structure of my latest piece, Creative Grows, and explaining how to deal with complex illustrations that have hundreds of elements. Just stacking them up on top of each other is not really feasible, so how can you organize your elements in Inkscape? The first one is layers. Once you start a new document, you start with layer 1. The other ones are groups. You can put elements into groups, one element in a group or multiple elements in a group. And then there's clip groups, which are groups with an added clip to contain the content. This is based on Inkscape's template file. It came with layers in place properly named, and I added a few elements to it. Looking at the document resources, you can see there are 13,050 elements in this design, lots of gradients, a whole bunch of colors, and a lot of Gaussian blurs. This might not be a typical Inkscape file, but structure helps as soon as you reach a certain level of complexity. The design consists of 3 parts: the welcome and website, which we won't be looking at the moment. They are copies of the about with changes to the composition. Let's hide all the layers and start from the bottom. The background is a clip group defined by a rectangle that has the size of the page. The advantage of working with a clip group is whatever I place inside is trimmed to the exact size, and I can place objects, groups, and additional layers inside the clip group. Unlike the mask or the clip, I can easily edit and add to this group. I placed a layer with rectangles curved on one side on top. Using the pen tool and snapping, I created 2 shapes for the vector mesh that makes up the ground, usually locking the layer I've finished working on in order not to accidentally move or select those elements. The lights are in a layer above it, and the groups of grass get their own layer. Usually it's a variation of the same group with 4 or 5 lines and a tapered stroke. Minor variations and a mirror are usually enough to make it not look repetitive. I separated the plants into 2 layers, plants behind the main elements and the ones in front of the main elements. That way it's easier to get the layer stacking right. Within these layers, I have layers for the type of plants. That way I can select plants that look similar right away, change their gradient, change their color, change the scaling, or change their layering. Because looking at this one now, the blue part on the left shouldn't be where it is. I cut that one and paste it in the foreground so it appears above my main plant, which is a separate layer again. I created a spiral with a tapered stroke to create the main shape, added more lines with tapered stroke, converted all of them to paths and combined them with path union. Used that as a clip group for the shading and the striped pattern. On top of that are the leaves and the thorns. I grouped the element that define the shape, the leaf or the thorn, to make it easier to handle before I duplicate. For the thorns, it probably would have made sense to use clones. On top of that sits the foreground. I copied the blue plant into this layer and it's placed at the very top. I manually move it to the bottom to be behind the dome shapes. The elements consist of the shape with the gradient. I used separate layers for the shading and the patterns. I wasn't sure if those would work. It's a lot easier to delete a whole layer than find all the elements in all the shapes and delete them one by one. I did the same with the main dome. It has a gradient for the main shape, which is the base for the clip group, and the pattern and the shading are placed inside. The plants are on their own layer with additional layers for each plant group inside. The idea here is speed as well. It makes it easier to hide, move, alter or select a whole layer. The seeds have their own layer and consist of groups of multiple elements. I duplicated the group, scaled it, rotated it, flipped it and positioned it, and applied the same concept to the flowers. This time working with clones. The petal is one group, cloned and then duplicated. This allowed me to quickly adjust the colors of the flowers during the design process. For the two other pages, website and welcome, all I had to do was duplicate my about layer, which had all the sub layers in, move it, adjust the dimensions, scaling and position while retaining my structure. As soon as your design becomes a little bit more complex, think of the logical units. You might have a background, a midground, a foreground, a layer for details or layer for characters. Take a moment to create those layers and name them, and before you know it, it will become a habit. I hope you enjoyed this slightly different video and learned something new. If you did, please subscribe to my channel, click on the notification icon, leave a like, and I will see you again soon.